I'm George Gonzalez. I love making games, and I'm here to help you be successful in your dream careers as a game developer. And today we're going to talk about the market. And I want to take a different spin on it and talk about the game market for everybody. Because I've been looking and I've been hearing a lot of stuff about, for example, Steam, VR, mobile console. Like most of 90% of the time, if you're talking about market, is usually Steam. And that's all people talk about. This channel is for game developers. And I want to zoom out. We're going to talk about the market and how that influences you and your decisions so that you can win as a game developer. Whatever your career choice is or your goals, your dreams, you need to be able to have a bigger picture. And I would think that out of all the different career types, game developers would be the ones to understand how to win because you make games every day and games are about enjoying them, playing them. The same thing applies to a career. In order to win, you have to know the rules. In order to enjoy the game, you you have to know why you're playing that game and why you enjoy it, so that you can continue to enjoy it, the game, however you want to play it. But in order to understand that, you need to know the rules, and so that's what we're gonna take a big picture understanding of the game market, because there's a lot of misconceptions. Usually, that forms wrong expectations. So let's talk about it. I have this Venn diagram. We have PC, which is what most people think about when they think about Steam. We also have VR and mobile and console as the market. And sometimes these are separate, sometimes they overlap, and we're going to talk about each one. But the main focus is that you understand all these markets because these are all pools of people that are buying. There's people that only play mobile games. There are people that only play VR games. There are only people that play PC, and some that only play console. And then there's the in between. And there's people that play all three or four. Um, but I want to make sure that you have all the assets because I am very surprised that people that call themselves professionals about marketing and whatnot only talk about one source, and they don't take a look at the whole pie because there's a difference. And I want to share that with you today. Okay, I'm a VR developer, but I play mobile games, I play PC games sometimes, and I have a Nintendo Switch, but I've had where our VR game got offered to be put on Sony on the PSVR 2, and we decided not to do that because it wasn't worth the money. Okay, so I want to talk about all these aspects because they're very important. Um, Regardless of if you want to work for a company, or if you want to do your own studio, your own games, indie, solo, small team, big team, whatever it is, this is key. So the first thing I want to talk about is money. Like, I don't have a big graph with all the money that's being spent, but like I can tell you the biggest players on each. So on mobile, for example, the biggest players is worldwide. Gacha games. Gacha games is huge on mobile, and is the free to play aspect is dripping into the other markets, but so much more in mobile. And so there's free to play, and then there's gacha, and then not NSFW content. Um, and so that's the reality of the market in mobile. Those are the big players where if you look for, there's a reverse engineering. Most of these, you won't get the exact amount of money being earned by the company because oftentimes they have not just mobile, they have a PC client, and they also have like mobile Asia and then mobile US. They have different regions. And usually they don't say how much they earn unless they're public known company, but each game doesn't do that. So there's a thing called Sensory Tower, and on Reddit for gacha games, they usually every month they come up with a report based on reverse engineering some of the things that happen. And so, in a general, most of these games, top 5 games, usually make a lot of money every month. And I think last month, for example, with mobile, uh, the Pokemon trading card game actually made like $90 million in 1 month. So there's a lot of dollars in the mobile, but you are playing with the big dogs, right? Like there's big companies that are making the big money. Very little indie games, usually Japanese-owned companies, and then sponsored or translated and made by a well-known company in the US. So that's usually what happens. So indie devs, I don't think there's like that big money making for indie games, but there is money in that. There's also ads and stuff, but usually that's where the big money comes from. The gacha world and the not NSFW content. Uh, but there's money there. There's also other ways to earn because Pokemon Pokemon trading card game proved that you can make money without having NSFW content. And so it's beating out the other gacha. And it's not a pay to win mechanic where it feels like you have to buy. People just want to buy. And so that's another thing. Like you don't have to follow the trend. Okay, so let's move over to Steam. Steam, what the thing is with Steam, there are millions of dollars as well. The problem again is that you are competing with big AAA companies. Uh, but there's a bigger earn for indie devs because there are sales that often happen, and usually that's when like you have strategies to combat the big titles, right? You have wish list farming, that's a thing. But even so, like you see most of the people that are bragging on YouTube about Steam sales is like, I made 300,000 on my game, right? Or I mean, like even making 300,000 is not enough to keep it, just barely to keep above water for a year. So because you have to pay multiple people, even if you're solo, like if it takes you 3 years to make 300,000, you made 100,000 each year, right? But that's after the fact, and so there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of um, costs that are not seen. And so Steam, it's hard because it's a red ocean. Same with mobile. You're competing with the big guys. And once in a while, there are people that break out. So it's not a reason not to make games on Steam. You have to be aware of who's in that pool. And you can compete within different genres, right? And then there's VR. VR is actually the top titles earn maybe not $90 million, but based on what I've heard, because I heard from different people from the horse's mouth, so different titles. Like I know that they earn around 8 to 9 million on the top grossing ones, and they're not big teams. They're two devs, one artist teams, and there's very little indie devs that make 14 million or so, not a month, but maybe for the year. And so that is way different than Steam, right? Where indie developers are not even breaking a million. And if they were, they would be bragging. There's very few. And even those are usually full teams, right? Like even 2 or 3 devs or more artists. So we have that. VR is blue ocean right now. So indie devs are basically taking most of the big titles, because the bigger titles like Assassin's Creed is the only one kind of like really like with a full team. There's Pavlov, there's other big titles that are AAA quality that are in there in the top 20, but the top titles are usually indie devs, and it depends obviously, but it is possible for indie devs to make it big on VR, and so I just wanted that out there because, and then there's console I've seen. Let me give you my take from VR. Let's start with VR. So VR is very niche, and Meta is the monopoly on VR right now. You can port to Pico, you can port to Pimax, other headsets, you can port to PC, you can port to PSVR 2. There's other ports, but there's not that much player base there and not much earning in that. Usually, what I've seen titles that publish on these other assets, they have a deal. So one, they either have their sponsors or the people that give them money that is based on like the money that they get, the grant or the venture capital is based on, okay, the plan is to port to all the other consoles. And so they do that. And sometimes, for example, Pico, if they really want your game on their store, they'll work out a deal to pay for the price that it would take you to port that game. So don't just do it for free. You got to deal with these consoles. Like PSVR won't pay you, Pico will. Steam doesn't care, right? So like it's not really worth on Steam, because Steam, your game's gonna get pirated left and right, super easy. Like it jailbreak, all that is gonna happen. So there's some risk with that. But VR is very blue ocean, and you only have to worry about meta. My tip is worry about meta if you're doing VR, and the rest will take care of with the cost of that. Because if you make enough, you'll make it from meta. Whereas NPC, what I've heard from people that, and they're on YouTube sharing that most of the time, if they make a game for PC, usually like a 2D or like a side scroller, they port it to the Switch and or other platforms, and they make more sales from those than on Steam. because oftentimes the consoles have a smaller library, and so your your space, like your awareness, it's easier to find your game in those, especially if you're on when it's on sale. Uh, so console porting to console for a Steam title, a PC title, or a mobile version of the game that you want on the Switch or PlayStation or Xbox. Usually, that's a good thing. Okay. Now, how does this help you? Like, why would I care? Like, I already know I'm doing PC. I'm going to Steam. The reason why I say this is because if you want to have a career at a big studio, you got to understand what type of games you want to make. Are you want to make mobile games? Are you want to make PC games? And then within that, you have to get into the genre, right? So when you're learning things, you have to take this into consideration because you might say, as an artist, it's like, well, I did models for VR, but I want to do mobile games. The problem is that there are certain challenges that come with each console or each one of these markets, like mobile devices, VR, PC, console, like how you optimize geometry, how do you port things over, how do you import, export assets. And so every single one of these is different. And then also within that, like if you do, there's different genres. And so this is like you step back to see the big picture. Okay. When you go looking for a job or building a company, you need to know what the market is like, who you're competing with, and where you want to compete as a business. It's the same as any restaurant, any business you want to start. And so if you want to build a game studio, you have to take this into consideration and think about, okay, if I am going to play with the big dogs, like what are the big titles? And because you're fighting for breadcrumbs on Steam and on mobile, it's like, how are you going to stand out? How do you do it if you're going mobile or PC? You do the market research, you figure out what genre you want to be in. You can follow the same route that Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap, they worked for Blizzard before they created Marvel Snap. They made the game. They knew how to make multiplayer card game. They made Hearthstone, or they worked on Hearthstone, and a developer and a game design guy was like, let's do it on our own. And they came up with a prototype. They went to Marvel. They figure out they had contacts, obviously, but they're like, hey, we can make this game for Marvel. Let us, like they work out a deal with the IP. They make the title, they make the game. They make millions of dollars, right? So if you want to get into the field, you can make it big. You can own a big IP, but you have to have the skills first, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Think about the big picture. Think about your dream job or your dream career or your dream studio that you want to build. Like if that's your goal, then you have to start working on it now. Figure out where you're gonna be. Choose, like if you choose Steam, okay, what titles you want to make? Card games. You want to make 2D games, Sprite, side scroller, platformers, PvP, multiplayer, whatever the genre is, and start dialing down as you go. Because learning how to make a game on mobile devices is different because you'll need Android and Apple. For Steam PC, it's pretty easy because Steam takes care of most of it. That you need to learn. What's the next step? So the first step is the console, and then the next step is the genre. And after you do that, just keep making games in that genre and putting spins on it. As you build your library of games, if you have 10 games, even if like they're small for a specific genre, you'll figure out the ins and outs of that genre, and you'll have ideas about how to make them better. Oftentimes, I see developers are like, "Oh, I have this great idea because I play this game and I want to make a better version of that game," and they jump straight into that small niche that's like right here in the middle. It's like very little right there, and they zoom in really fast, and then they take 10 years to build a game in that genre, or they take 3 and they're like, oh crap, I like all these stuff that they learn, but how much money did you make out of that? You spent 3 years on it. And so you need to be able to also fund your life. If you're doing this as a side hobby and you are never making money off of this, you're gonna never reach your destination. Like it would take you 80 years, and by then this whole thing changed. The market will change. There's AI, there's with mobile, there's also AR, like mixed reality, all these things that change with technology. When you're making games, you have to take into account technology as well. You can't take 3 years making a game. You're going to be behind. Make small games. Think about the genre you're in. Whatever your dream career is, you have to start working on it now. Think of your scope, dial it down. If you never made a game before, 3 months. Do something in 3 months. And once you make that game, now you know what's the next step? What else do I need to add? And keep adding. And then you can keep going. You can say, okay, I'm going to take 4 months. But now, whatever took what took me 3 months to do, I can do in 2 days because I already done it. Or maybe you say, this time I'm going to take 1 month, but I'm going to make it better because I already learned what not to do for the last 3 months. Because usually every time, the first time you do something, you're going to do it wrong and you're not going to like it. It's like, because you're learning, because the next one will be better and the next one will be better. And if you work on smaller chunks, 3 to 4 months, those 3 or 4 months will improve. And the value that you provide as a developer or as an artist, those 3 months will improve because now you can do what you did in 3 months in 2 or 1. Or you can do more things because now it's just you already done it. You can just add one more thing that you're gonna learn, and you keep doing that, and you'll be able to get there. But I want to make sure that you understood that when you're in PC and mobile, you're fighting with the big guys. You're playing. It's a red ocean, and VR is blue ocean. Console is red ocean too. The problem with console, PC, and mobile, PC and console most of the time, the big guys are not even playing by the same rules. Like as an indie developer, you have to do wish list, you have to do all this research, marketing. They do the research, they do the marketing too. They might have big IPs, but the other thing that you don't have is they have reputation, and they can make deals, and they negotiate, and so they get paid up front, just like as if they would with a publisher. But they don't do the same deals that we do. When you make a deal with a publisher, it's a lot different, and you oftentimes end up paying a lot for a publisher in the long run. So it is very important that if you want to play, like you can be playing with the big dogs as an indie developer. You just gotta earn your reputation, and the way you do that is by making games, getting better and better, and just make games. Because the reason why the VR market is so profitable for indie devs is because big companies have tried, and they're still trying, making big games that take years to make. Assassin's Creed, Ghostbusters, the Batman game, what is the Stranger Things? Like Stranger Things, no one even plays it probably. Like it's like it's a one-time thing, and in comparison to other games that are way crappier, in my opinion, they're not for me, but they're for another audience, and they make millions. And so like big teams are losing because they're spending so much time, and they're trying to do the same thing they do mobile and PC, where they make a big title and then nothing happens. I was there at the beginning of VR when Insomniac is like a big company. They're well known. They make amazing games. They went into VR and they made this awesome mage type game, and it tanked. It died out. VR wasn't a big thing back then. If they would have done it now, they probably made more money. But even so, like the big companies can't compete because it takes so much money and they don't get as much in return. Whereas these indie devs have low cost and big returns. And so right now it's a huge market for VR and for indie developers. But you can be wherever you want to, and you can still make big money by working for a big company. The main thing is focus on experience in that title, and you will win regardless. Regardless of what happens with the outside world, regardless of what happens, you pick a niche, you pick whatever you want to work in, your dream, and you make games. Every single day you work on making games, and you will win. It's as simple as that. And I know it's harder to do it. It's easier said than done, but you can do it. All you have to do is gain experience and level up. And that's why I make this channel, to show you how to do it. That's why I have a community, to help you do it and fulfill your dreams.